how can we make sure, is there any kind of things that we can tell them to be like, hey, here's how to go create an amazing brand that people remember, that people refer?
You earn it. I don't think you can buy it. You can spend a lot of money buying attention, but you can't buy a brand.
Hey, what's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast designed for the digital agency owner to be the fly on the wall and really hear what agency owners are chatting about so you can actually grow and scale your agency faster. And on today's episode, I have an amazing agency owner who's going to talk about what are agencies doing well in branding, what are they missing, and we'll probably get into a lot of other cool stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into the show. Hey, Jaci, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. So tell us who you are, what you do.
Sure. Jaci Russo, co-founder and CEO of Brand Russo, which is a strategic branding agency located in Lafayette, Louisiana, the heart of Cajun country.
Oh, I love Louisiana.
Yeah,
I went my first 2 years. I went to Mobile, Alabama. I went to Spring Hill, and when the bars would close, we would drive down to New Orleans and get in all kinds of trouble. So,
oh yes, I'm in Lafayette. I was where I went to college at the University of Louisiana. Go Cajuns! And so we're 2 hours from New Orleans. So when our bars would close, we too would get on the road. I think about the choices now, and I'm very glad that my kids do not have those same inclinations.
No, we made bad life decisions back then, which I would not hope my kids replicate. So, but how'd you start the agency? You started in 2001. So what made you start?
Well, the aforementioned kids. So I was working after college. I moved to Los Angeles. I worked at Creative Artists Agency, went to work for Barry Diller, got to be a part of the rebranding of Ticketmaster and USA Networks, moved home, worked in-house at an agency, and then worked in-house for a client, and was in-house for the client, had gotten married, honeymoon surprise, had a first kid, now surprised with a second kid. And I wasn't so surprised. Like, I know how that happens. I was just surprised it was happening so fast. And my father-in-law said, you know, you're never going to get ahead being a W-2 worker. And if you really need more time, you need to change your schedule. And so I thought, well, I'm a licensed media buyer, so I'll just be a freelance media buyer. And that lasted for 5 minutes when we had clients that had creative needs, and being married to a graphic designer and copywriter. So now he's working nights for me and doing his real day job. And then all of a sudden he says, you have more clients than my agency does. And I was like, oh, well, maybe we're an agency. So then he left, and now both of us are unemployed, which is how it felt. But technically we both worked for the agency. And then I looked up 3 years later, and we had 12 employees, and we were busting at the seams in this 900 square foot room. And so we bought a building in downtown Lafayette, and now we've got 20 something people and clients across the country. And it's been 23 years. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, it goes by a blink of an eye. You know, whenever I started having kids, that's when it just was like on hyperdrive. Yes. And I'm like, you know, I was telling you, in a couple months, this show will be 10 years old, which is like, I'm like, really? Like, I feel like I recorded I still can remember my first 3 or 4 episodes, like almost verbatim. I remember the guest names, the topics, and it wasn't even a podcast back then. It was a Google Hangout that I just wanted to put on YouTube. And then a friend told me, it was like, oh, you should do a podcast. I was like, what's a podcast? And I was like, oh, that's stupid. And then I did it, and then it was the best thing ever. So let's get into kind of what we're going to talk about is around branding. And yep. I feel a lot of people get this wrong. They're, you know, we're kind of talking kind of the pre-show a little bit. They're reactive to the market. They make, you know, especially agencies, we brand in a way to make us look really smart, and we make everyone else look dumb because we're using terminology that only us actually get. So what are you seeing, and how can we fix this and make sure we're not doing this stuff the wrong way?
Well, I see exactly that. I see agency owners using industry terminology that is insular and it excludes the target audience they're trying to reach because those people are in a different industry and they don't speak the same language. And then we almost use it like a baton and hit people over the head with it because we think it makes us sound smarter, but it does not. And it's just all around, it's bad form. And so what I see is when people really understand their target audience, they understand what the challenges are, what the needs are, what the wants are, and they're able to dig into how they talk. So SEO is great. We could talk search engine optimization all day long. But when I see companies optimizing for their in-house terminology and the people they're trying to reach use an entirely different set of terms, what a disconnect. And it's so obvious. And yet people miss it every day.
Yeah, I remember there's one client in particular, they did websites for nonprofits and they branded themselves as, I'm a web agency for nonprofits. I'm like, it's descriptive, but it's not good. Like that's not kind of what I would use. And so I started asking them questions. I'm like, well, what challenges do they have? Why do they come to you? Well, they want more members. They want more donors. They want more volunteers. I'm like, okay, why do they want that? So they can spread their message. I was like, why don't you say, I help nonprofits get more members, donors, and volunteers so they can spread their message?
Right.
Right. And like brand that terminology that's very descriptive versus, what you do. No one cares what you do. Like
no one cares what you do. No one cares what you do. If you haven't already read Story Brand by Donald Miller, he does an excellent job of highlighting how companies spend all this time talking about features. And so they think when asked, what do you do? It's an opportunity to actually tell people what we do. And in fact, it's an opportunity to answer the unasked question, what do you do for me? That's the question. And so then it lends itself to an entirely different answer that is not talking about the company, but in fact, talking about the solution. So if you look at every target audience member as the hero of the story, and you are the guide who is bringing them a solution, it will completely juxtapose how you've been creating messaging and the content you've been creating. Now you're actually writing something people care about because you're writing about them, and that's the only thing they care about.
Yeah, we've been doing that for ever since we really kind of started. Like if you go to our about page, like the jasonswenk.com/about, I ask questions, and that's the easiest way in order to flip the switch to put the spotlight on them, which that's what they want, versus going, hey, here's all the awards that I got. Here's how cool we are, how many cups of coffee that we drink a day. Here's a picture. Like I do have a picture of my dog on the website. Director of cuteness, have to have that on there. But, like ask the questions first to let people know that they're in the right place. I've always found that does a good job. It's kind of like, you can see behind you, you're a speaker queen of speaking at all these conferences. Imagine if I came up to you at a conference and I was like, hey, Jackie, I'm Jason. I'm the best in the world, blah, 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 blah. You're a loser, go away from me. Versus if I put the attention on you. It's the same thing. Like if you're an agency, look at your marketing, look at your website, look at your stuff as if it's shouting, you're doing it the wrong way. Have a question mark and you're good.
Exactly. We stopped applying for agency awards back in 2007. So when we bought the building and we did a remodel, we had enough space, for I don't know, however many shelves in our conference room for trophies. And so right when we put the last trophy that we had won on the shelf, which I think took about 2 years, it's like, okay, the shelves are full. I'm not building more shelves, so we don't need to win any more trophies. Done. And we haven't entered another award show. Now, my creative team, they like to know that they have award-winning work. It's important that they feel recognition from their peers. And so I appreciate and respect that. So we talk about how else they can feel that, stay on the industry trends, know that what they're doing matters and is well-designed and it's good and get that recognition. But I don't need an award. My clients don't need me to win an award. They need me to win them new business. They need to know that their businesses are growing with smart investments. And so that's where we focus our time and attention.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was the same way. The only award that I ever wanted and then we won was the best place to work in Atlanta. Nice. And that's the only one I cared about. All the other ones were total BS. And I used to tell all the agency owners coming in that I would work with, I was like, why are you even wasting your time? But I'm glad you mentioned that about the creative, because I remember one owner was like, my team wants to feel more appreciative that their work, because they don't, a lot of times creatives or certain people, they don't see their work being impactful outside of, right? And so those awards help them out. And I always told agency owners, I'm like, look, I've only lost one deal because I didn't win awards. And this was a company called Mellow Mushroom. I still have not eaten their pizza.
The pizza place.
Yes. I still will not eat their pizza because they came to us many, many years ago and for a redesign. And we were pitching with another agency that will be nameless. And they had like 80 Addy awards. And they were like, Jason, we're going with this other agency because we want to win an Addy award, and they've won 80 and you haven't won any. And I'm like, I'm never eating your pizza again. Like, that was the only time I'm not vindictive at all, if you can't tell. But
they deserve it. Now I too will boycott them. We stand in solidarity, Jason.
Yes, because we don't believe in awards. But I was like, that's the dumbest thing. You're redesigning a website to win an Addy award? Like, that's your goal? Like, I just couldn't comprehend it. So they would have made a terrible client anyway, even though they do make good pizza. So I will give it to them.
They do. We believe in the adage of understanding personality profiles. And it helps in a lot of ways. One, it'll be a good match with our agency. Like attracts like. I'm kind of a headline personality type, and I do really well with headline clients. So that's important. Also, it allows us to understand their industry and know what kind of people engineers typically are body copies. And so we know when we're creating something that's targeting engineers or attorneys, people who are going to read all the details, we have to give them a lot of details. So when we look at those 4 personality types, headlines, skim the headlines. And so we design accordingly. Illustrations love the pretty picture and they love awards. And so when you know you're dealing with an illustration, you may not have shelves and shelves of trophies, the 80 Addies. You have to find other ways that you've been acknowledged for your greatness. So the award of a client sticking around for 12 years because you keep producing solid return on their investment, that can work in that area. The body copies need to read a lot. And then the logos, they look to their peers for endorsement of their choices. So they need case studies, they need testimonials. So there's no one size that fits all. We know that when we're building a brand, we're talking about an emotional connection, not just a pretty logo. And so we have to use that knowledge of the target audience that deeply to craft something that's really going to connect with them.
So let's say, there's obviously the only people that listen to the show is agency owners. And obviously they've listened this far, so they're interested in kind of making sure that they want to get the attention of their perfect audience. How can we make sure, is there any kind of things that we can tell them to be like, hey, here's how to go create an amazing brand that people remember, that people refer?
You earn it. I don't think you can buy it. You can spend a lot of money buying attention, but you can't buy a brand. And so you have to earn it by knowing your audience better than they know themselves. It's research. It's asking questions. It's understanding why your audience is choosing who they're choosing now, because they're choosing somebody. They're getting somebody to do something. So they're ignoring the problem. They have a different vendor handling the problem. They're handling it themselves badly, or they're using one of your competitors. And so you've got to know what their disappointment is with their current solution, which is not what you think their disappointment should be. It's what their disappointment actually is. Then you know how to drive a wedge. Changing habits is hard. People are loyal by nature. And so leaving a vendor is a difficult decision. And so you've got to give them a really good reason to go through the hassle of changing. I'm dealing with this right now. I've got a provider that I'm very frustrated with, and months of frustration. And finally, I'm like, okay, now I got to go through the process of researching options. And then I have to tackle the untangling of
then the onboarding and
yes,
them and
getting all the information that I need and the 7 years of history. And it's easier to stay. It's easier to suck it up. And so you've got to be so much better than the hassle I'm going to have to go through to switch to you. So how are you earning that?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think too, a lot when I look at, if I'm going to switch a vendor that I've been with a long time, they have to like there's two things. I think it's speed is one. And then how easy can you make it for me? Like what I hate is when, especially too, like I hire agencies all the time to do stuff for us. And what a bad agency will do is they will come in and they will create so much work for me and my team. And I'll be like, holy cow, like who's working for who? Versus a good agency will come in, they'll ask the right questions, they'll take away the stuff we don't need, and they'll make it simpler. If that's a word. Is that simpler a word? I don't know.
Simpler is a word. More simple and simpler both work.
I'm always making up words. So my team's like, what? Like when I always say trajectory, and they're like, what is that? I was like,
that is not a word. You definitely made that up. That is not a word.
I know that's not a word because I always say it. But how can you make it fast and easy and make it where they understand the process and like they'll switch in a second.
Correct.
Like,
yep. We do a lot of work for business banks. And years ago, probably 15 years ago, you know how hard it is to switch banks, especially with all the ACH and automated payments and everything.
Toasters.
Well, there you go. Well, we created a switch kit. And so the switch kit was super simple. You filled in like 3 or 4 pieces of information, and then the bank had appointed someone to manage all of the switching.
That's
so
awesome.
Made it easy.
Yep. Make it easy. There was a guest I had on the podcast. They used an example of switching banks is one of the most painful things. He wrote a book. It's Joey Coleman. How to never lose a client again or a customer again. And he used that example. He's like, switching banks is very hard, but most people, pick a bank and then 6 months later they switch.
Right.
And it's like, how bad of an experience did they create that you got to move everything, so that's really good. Well, Jaci, this has been amazing. Is there anything I didn't ask you around branding or running an agency that you feel that the listeners will benefit from?
No, the one thing is, I get proposals from digital agencies all the time, either for us or for our clients. And look at what your competition is sending out, because from where I'm sitting, they all sound alike. They all kind of blend together. Everybody's just trying to sell me services without even knowing what my challenges are. They're assuming what I'm facing every day, not knowing. So quality over quantity. Take the time, have less prospects, but know them better, and you're going to connect with them deeper, and they're going to be more likely to say yes. So that's my word of advice for the day.
Yeah, I like that. I always hate just lobbing a proposal over the fence. A lot of agencies do that. And you're just going to be judged on paper and the number. But if you can kind of change the conversation, and how I always tell people is change the conversation in a fact where you're not doing a proposal for them. You're going to do what I always say, do a clarity call for 30 minutes to get to know them. Then in that clarity call, take them to sell them something of like an hour or 2 hours of your time, which you're probably already giving away for free. And this will identify the biggest issue. And then that will point out the project that you need to put a proposal together for, which they're already going to sign off. And then that will lead to a retainer. And if you do that, you're going to win so many more deals faster, easier, and they're actually going to be a lot more money. And you get rid of all the crappy prospects that are wasting your time as well.
Well, and that's the thing is you take a few baby steps to get the big prize versus rushing straight to the yes too soon and losing every opportunity of actually working with this person. So we do a lot of work with IT companies, and we've really, I think, gotten down to the point where it's like, hey, use this 26-point checklist. Volunteer a little bit of your time at no or low cost to do a solid assessment. And now you have some real intel and some real solutions you can provide because you found some real problems. Same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just make it easy for people. And it's fast. It's fast and easy. That's the whole thing. So, well, this has been amazing. What's the agency website people can go and check you out?
brandrusso.com.
Awesome. Easy enough. Well, Jaci, thanks so much for coming on the show. If you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe and send it out to a friend. And if you're an agency owner that wants to be in the most amazing agency community where it's really amazing people sharing what's working, being able to see the things you're not able to see, make sure you go to agencymastery360.com and click that little scale button, and we'll have a conversation. And until next time, have a swank day.